You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. This is Rob, your co-host. We are deep underground the Pine House Palace in the underground bunker, location undisclosed. E, are you here?
I am here. I
Because you are.
finally made it.
You sound much better, sir.
Yeah.
I have a question for you really quick before we start.
Okay.
Is there a doctor in the house?
Well, there might be. I'm driving the Ecto around right now, so.
Dr. Woo Woo, Dr. Detroit, or is it Dr. Venkman?
Could be Dr. Fate as well.
Well, Doctor, I'm glad you're here. Obviously, we had to put the hood on you and drug you and bring you in because, again, in Pine Hills, where things are at. I mean, even Daisy and Hannah, the German shepherds that patrol the grounds of the Pine Hills Palace, aren't familiar with you. But I appreciate the fact that you're here hosting for a little bit tonight. You got E up to speed so he can actually speak. So tonight, wanted to cover Brightburn and some odds and ends, and what we got left over, we're going to finish up tomorrow night. We did a preview a while back that Englentine had saw of Brightburn, and I just saw it too. Have you seen it, Doctor?
Have not. Try not to look at the sun.
So I want to go first and explain about it because I love the film, and after some time letting the opinions gel and with everybody coming out with their popular attitude, it'd be interesting to see how E's opinion changes. I thought this film was fantastic. My number one concern about this movie was, one, the wife I thought was the worst character, and I wondered if the writing team was going to make her an SJW type. The reason why I see it is because there's a scene early on where the kid, he's about 12 years old, he's getting a gun handed to him, and it's kind of cool. They're in like a pancake store and they bring in a gun and he opens it up. And I'm like, yeah, you would do that back in the day, but in today's time you wouldn't. And of course, the friends, the family friends who give it to him, the wife's like, see, I told you he wouldn't like it. And I thought, Jesus Christ, they're making the men ineffective and bad fathers because one could argue this movie's about bad parenting on the female side. Simply said, she's absent reality. She wants a baby really bad early on that you see. What I will say is I really liked how the film started off with them totally skipping the whole origin story part. And of course, if there's a sequel or anything else to it, I think that'll be really interesting how they play it out because they skip right to his adolescence. And frankly, it was just his parents trying to deal with things. And I thought the father was decent. Fantastic film. Violence was great. Jaw-dropping, as we all know, pun intended. I loved how it ended. That was the clincher for me. I had to hold my breath during the third act because while it was well paced and well shot, I just thought, okay, this is going to be so stupid. They telegraphed it a mile away. A little piece of metal from the kid's spaceship's going to be able to cut him because it cut him earlier, and she's going to stab him with it. And it's going to be. And I was so furious.
You don't give away the ending, man. Come on, let people see.
What are you talking about? Yeah. The ending does not go that way for those of you listening and who have not seen it. Let's just say the ending is tremendous. It's a, how should we say it, down to earth, and it does set up for a sequel.
Well, yes, it does in more ways than one. Yes.
From the trailer, it looked pretty. It looks pretty good because it's basically it looks like Superman basically.
Yeah.
And so if he goes evil, and there's no other, who are you gonna get? You have to get something that makes him weak, either kryptonite or something. So I
understand that. I'm familiar about how that goes. What I will say is that I liked how they set it up. I kept thinking of the scene in the school where they show him being like super smart, where he's talking about bees and wasps and their place in the natural universe. And I wonder if that basically is foreshadowing the setup, because E, you had a very, very wonderful idea about how you thought this could be set up with the mom.
Well, speaking of the bees and the wasp, there's some that are naturally aggressive and some that only strike when it's necessary. Could set up anyway the fact that there are two of these kids. You've got your Superman character, which, the Clark Kent version. And you've got this guy who is brought up in the same way. This is nature versus nurture as far as Brightburn and Superman, because they are basically raised by the same set of parents up to a certain point. When Mom and Pa Kent discover Superman or Clark Kent has powers, they want to help him out. They kind of cultivate. They still treat him like they're his son. The father, on the other hand, gets scared. And I think that is a very realistic reaction to it. Not that Pa Kent wasn't, or that would never happen. It's just that this is a realistic reaction to be afraid of something so powerful, even if it was your own child. There would be an element of fear. So I didn't fault the writers or even the actor or anybody for playing it this way. It's just it could be a different way. It is nature versus nurture, where you're going to have a child raised in a similar setup be more aggressive. And that is where this guy comes from. Because really the parent, while the father was fearful, didn't really go nuts until things started happening around town and he could put 2 and 2 together. And that's when he became really fearful towards his child. So I really do think that they could be setting up some sort of conflict with 2 superpowered beings in the next movie, but that's just a theory, a fan theory.
I hope they do not do that, because to me, I know everyone says, oh, it's what if Superman was bad. It's an easy way to describe it. To me, however, I had a few people on Reddit kind of ask me about it, and I mentioned to them, no, this is a horror movie. It's not a superhero.
No, it is not a superhero film.
It's a horror movie with a kid, and by the way, the kid is fantastic. It's one of those things where he just delivers a few lines, like when the little girl, when he visits the girl that he's crushing on a little bit, and he's talking to her, and she says something like, well, my mom's downstairs, and he's like, well, I'll take care of that. And it's just fantastic. He was wonderful, and he was actually intimidating, because normally you laugh at kids here. I thought the pacing was spot on, but I just want it to be a horror movie, and I thought your idea of what could happen with the mom would be interesting. I'm not sure if that's possible going forward. I don't really know anything about the background. I was going to ask you, is this based off of a, graphic novel, or is it just brand new? What is it? I mean,
well,
I have no idea.
Okay, so if you're a comic book reader for any amount of time and you pay attention to Superman at all, you've come across this storyline.
Yes.
This is not the very first time that Superman's been portrayed as a supervillain. More famously, of course, the Injustice video game, which has a very good comic book attached to it, or a webcomic anyway. So we have seen this, but it's not exactly based on any one specific
Gotcha.
novel. Yeah.
So, Doctor, were you wanting to see it, or I know we did some brief reviews and we said it looked kind of interesting. I'm going to tell you, it's a must-see film.
I kind of want to see it, but I'm worried. Is it like cliche, the trope where he gets, bullied and then he just decides,
No.
Or is he evil?
This is literally, he's bad right from the, spoiler alerts. There are going to be some spoilers. We'll try to get away from big storyline spoilers, but no, this is a kid who is born bad.
Well, okay. Let me say this.
Like the Omen child, kind of like that.
He does a few things that we consider bad. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating, obviously. The way he does it's rather extreme. But at the same time, too, there's a possibility of the child himself actually not being in control. And that's part of the interesting thing going forward, which you'll have to see the film to see that. So it's not like he's walking around going, yeah, I can fly, I can zap people, I can do this, I can do that. He's going through puberty. He's discovering a little bit about himself, but there's definitely something that ties in with how he gets his powers, sort of, in a sense. So
the only powers you see from the
trailer, not committing to it necessarily early on.
The only powers you see from the trailer is using either his flight or super speed, and then he's got strength. I don't know if he's got the heat vision or not.
Yes,
he has something. Yes,
you actually see that. No, you see that in the preview. You can answer. Yeah, you can answer that without spoiling anything. Yeah. It's in the preview. The waitress has blocked herself in the freezer, and you kind of see that
he's pounding on it.
No, he's burning through the door, kind of Phantom Menace style with the lightsaber, but it's with
Well, I just thought it was very good because of the horror movie. What is it that's horrific? And I think just as us as normal humans, normally with my natural kind of disdain towards the comic book type movies and stuff, no offense guys, of course we know that, but what I liked about it was you got to see the effect that this kid not being right, for lack of a better term, had on everybody else around him, on the town. It wasn't that he was bullied. He just went through something at school with a girl, and he kind of didn't handle it correctly.
Yeah.
Nobody ever
Ouch.
does, and that's the whole point. You understand, how he'd be upset, but he didn't do anything where we go, oh, he deserves it or anything. We just know that he's trying to figure these things out. And you know what? Again, you could always sit there and say the mom was in denial. She kept trying to smother him, trying to tell him what a good little boy he was. He kind of knew something was different, and he was really more upset at the fact that his parents, particularly his mom, didn't bother letting him know what was going on. And that's really, I think, something they could have fleshed out a bit more and struggled, because to me, if there is a sequel, I hope they don't do the comic book superhero thing and have another one. I hope they just kind of go into him being adopted again and in high school this time, where maybe he's got a bit more control over it. That would be interesting. And if they keep it more as a character study and more of a horror movie that's pretty graphic, I think it'd be fantastic.
When you mean another one, like another one it's better than him, or when it's more evil than him?
Well, I think with the superhero idea of it, a lot of the reviews I was seeing, people were surprised, and they thought it was supposed to be a superhero type or supervillain movie.
Really?
And it's like, well, yeah, and it's just, well, because again, it's very simple to explain. Oh, it looks like Superman, the story of it, with the kid and he's bad, ha ha ha. No, it's not like that. And so this is not a movie that you watch and you go, ha ha, and you laugh like in a Chucky movie or something stupid. This is a movie that you go,
Well,
oh man, I can't believe he did that. Holy crap, they did that. My God, this kid did that.
well,
They did a very good job of doing not a lot of violence, but what violence was in there was just very
the way
good.
I was
Really nailed it.
what I always thought, if Superman was evil and it was real life, I could see him like disintegrating people with his heat vision, ripping their spleens out like Predator and all that stuff like that. I mean, if it's gory like that, then I'll probably watch. But I mean, I'm always been more particular towards the comedy / gore, like I said, Ash versus Evil Dead.
Yes.
So.
Well, even the first Ash movie was a little more dark tone-ish, actually, if you look at it.
The Evil Dead 2 though was they made it more like the Marx Brothers and like the Three Stooges.
Mm-hmm. We have in chat, Cicella saying, what would you do if you had superpowers that age? And I go, you know what? It would definitely go more like what this movie is. Not me specifically, but any kid getting with that. And that's the whole thing, is you don't hate the kid, but you're not rooting for him. You understand how it happens, and you're left going, okay, this is a bad kid. So I just wonder in a second film how they're going to get it to where you go, man, this kid needs to die, and how is that going to happen? And having a superhero just seems kind of whatever. But the whole dark part of it's not just the violence or the graphic nature that they presented, which they really went back to 80s style violence here. I'm serious. They really did. Mm-hmm. It's really the fact that, shit, this kid's really powerful. I don't know how we're going to handle it and deal with it. And
that was the big scare, because you're thinking they're I mean, even when in the end somebody realizes, oh my gosh, I've got to get to that to the ship because the metal can cut them. You've got to get there.
Yep.
Running from a person as fast as Superman, you have to be able to do everything in your normal speed, and they're as fast and as strong as well, at least Superboy, and so even though you've got the idea on how to stop them, you still got to do it. And I don't think people realize how powerful the comic book industry has made Superman. It's really, really, really rough. And, and it's that kind of sense of dread that fills this film.
Yes. Dread is an appropriate expression for it.
Christopher Reeve could turn back time, Superman's been able to, he can destroy the planet if he wants to.
Yeah. Well, that's the big scare about this one. It's definitely worth a watch, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally thumbs up. I was surprised by it. Your preview of it earlier got me kind of interested. The doctor and I were discussing what kind of diagnosis we have on our summer movies that we discussed last week, and that looked okay. And then when I saw it, I was like, wow, I'm really glad that you had covered it, because for all the fans out there listening, the ones I've been reading and some of the ones I've been messaging, I'm telling them, you know what? Love it. It's a great movie. Go see it.
The way I look at it, it's actually an original idea. Well, I mean, it's because it's kind of like Superman, but I mean, like, how many horror movies are like that? Where the person has superpowers. It's not like, like a demon. It's not like, Freddy or, Jason or Michael Myers, Well, this is a kid.
Yeah, it's not supernatural at all.
No.
I just hope they keep it as a horror movie. So yeah, I definitely agree. If you see it, it'll be interesting to see what your reaction is. If you like it as much as I do. I'm surprised I liked it as much as I did, and that's pleasantly so.
Yeah.
All right, what would we like to discuss next? I know you've got a couple things on there. Doctor, did you have something you want to mention? I know your time may be short this evening.
Yeah.
What would you like to cover?
Let him go. Yeah, let him go.
Well, the movie that I watched a couple of different movies, but the one I'll talk about, if you let me, is Lady Blood Fight,
Starring?
starring Amy Johnston, who's basically like stunt double for every action woman there is out there.
I
Apart
just
from-
realized she was the stunt woman in Deadpool. And
Yep.
wasn't she Harley Quinn?
Yep.
I did not know that.
I mean, look at she's friends with the stunt double for Black Widow.
Hmm.
I mean, she was also in Mortal Kombat. It was an online web series.
Yeah.
So I mean, this woman I'm not sure if she's a black belt or not, but dude, she could kick your butt if she really wants to. She does all the moves in this movie. So basically, the movie is about a girl who she doesn't really fit in. Her mother is like a kind of poor, and she never knew her father, but she knows his picture. But so she goes to Hong Kong to find her father. Turns out her father was fighting in like an underground like martial arts competition.
Not just any underground one, the
It was-
Kumite.
Yeah. So basically, if you've watched Bloodsport or watched the original Kickboxer, this is like a really good like homage to that. Most of the girls in in this tournament, they actually do their own stunts.
Yes.
And of course, this is Englentine's favorite genre. It's Asian women hot.
Yeah. I saw the movie too. I have seen this film, so I do have a thought about it.
I imagine many times.
No, just once. Just once.
Sadly, there are no boobs in this one, but there is sexy Asian women in thongs.
Yeah,
Changing in the shower.
Yeah, there are. There's quite a few good-looking women of all particular nationalities. I do like it. I did not like when they tried to hype up, or amp up, I should say. When the violence started amping up on the mat, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not buying it.
You talking about the weapon fight?
Well, when everybody started killing each other, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not buying into this
The Russian girl.
because it wasn't to the death all throughout. It was just tap out and all that kind of stuff, and and it seemed like in the middle of the Karate Kid, Johnny decides to kill the guy, before he gets to, and everybody's like, okay, good kill, yeah.
Kill Danielson's friend.
It was out of nowhere. It didn't really fit the rest of the story. You didn't need it. A pure beatdown, knocking the girl's teeth out or whatever, that would have done just fine. As soon as they were killing each other, I was like, yeah,
I'll just say this at that scene where she couldn't stop her friend from getting killed because the two guys are holding her. But previous scene, she took out 4 guys.
Yeah.
So I was like, really? And these guys are like out of shape. They're not really like, that much of a threat.
Well, this is one of those cheap, I think, video on demand type movies. I don't know too much about her background. I was looking at it today, but it looks like it was one of the ones that they said, okay, we're going to put you as the starring lead. We're going to throw a bunch of people in there. And I will tell you this. I agree, E, with what you were saying when they tried to amp up the violence. That was unwarranted. For me, it seemed like if I was a 10-year-old boy or just a young kid and this movie came on, I would want to see it. And it seemed like at some point they decided to amp up the violence. I don't know why, because it was absolutely 100% fine with it. And I will say this. It's a good-looking film. You feel like you're in Hong Kong, obviously shot on location. I thought the fights actually were pretty decent. There's a little bit of the quick cut action, which I find distasteful. But for all the women, they looked real, legit. I appreciated most part wasn't even the fighting. It was the tumbling and the flippity floppity stuff, which I typically don't care for. It was done very well. And you can tell that her, especially Amy Johnston and the other ladies that were involved, they looked so natural on screen. They looked like they belonged. So even though it was girls fighting and, we're guys, whatever, they seem sincere. I mean, it's not a movie that you have to have great acting chops where, you totally, don't believe them, but it is what it is. It was supposed to be a bunch of chicks fighting each other. They didn't overly sex it up or anything. They had their little styles differences, which would have been interesting if they'd expand that a bit more. Like I always loved the tall Brazilian, capoeira type fighting styles and, all the grasshopper stances and all this stuff. So, you know what? Very entertaining film, not the greatest film in the world, but it's a decent worth a watch. But if nobody's seen Amy Johnston, I'm sure you have somewhere.
Oh.
It's a film worth watching. It's
She's-
entertaining enough.
She has her own YouTube channel too. She does like a fitness thing.
Yes.
So for our women who want to keep your, figure, or you guys too, probably, don't judge.
Well, at least you'll have wrist strength.
Now look,
Exactly.
she's a gorgeous, beautiful woman. There's a lot of them out there, of course, but she's obviously, I think, the daughter of a very famous kickboxer or some martial arts type. So it runs in her family. You can tell. It's just like Jean-Claude's daughter is legit. I don't know that she's pursuing an acting career per se, or at least not right now that I'm aware of. But the point is it was a nice vehicle for her to display that she's good online. I think she passes the on-screen test. I'm looking forward to seeing her in some action movies because, as we all know, especially for men 40, 45 and under in today's film, there's not a lot of manly guys out there. And with all these little 5'6", 140-pound Spider-Man wannabe types in these movies, she looks like she could kick half their asses.
She would make for the Mortal Kombat remake. I would love her as Sonya Blade.
Yeah.
I can see that. Now, I would like to go off on what you just said about not a lot of manly men in movies these days.
Yes.
Because I've got 2 reviews that I want to do. Based on this, there are 2 movies that I saw, and I want to. I'm going to say it is the age of the woke comedy. In this case, I saw 2 films recently. One is called The Long Shot with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron, and one is called Booksmart, and it's got 2 girls. The only one I know is on a TV show called Last Man Standing with Tim Allen. In both of these movies, men submit themselves to women. Now, granted, in the Seth Rogen, he stands up because he's got his principles. He's uber liberal, and she's running for office and can't believe that she actually has to compromise to get some stuff done. And Seth Rogen acts like a douche. But of course, he finds out that, wow, I need to stop acting like a douche. At the end, he's even saying, well, I'm taking her name and that kind of thing. My whole thought of all of this is, women aren't strong because men are weak. Women are strong because women are strong. And this is not the kind of character you get from movies like this. There's also something I want to point out, as seems to be as far as comedies are concerned. And this is actually in stand-up comedy these days as well. They are not after laughter. They're after something that's being called clafter. You don't have to actually laugh at their jokes, but if you agree with it, that's all they want. And
that's just like the typical the thing we discussed before with laugh tracks going back to the 50s and 60s. Every 3 lines and these things, you just pause and you condition the audience to applaud and everything else there too. Just like Saturday Night Live, you're absolutely right. That's pathetic pandering.
Yeah. It really is. So, first of all, I'm going to start with The Long Shot. That's the one I saw first. This is basically Seth Rogen is a journalist, and his newspaper that apparently he started with his friend. It's being bought out by a Rupert Murdoch kind of character, by Fox News, and of course he's uber liberal. He's far leftist. He's not liberal. He's far leftist. So he quits, and in order to cheer him up, his friend takes him to a party where he meets Charlize Theron, which
the out of the league woman.
Say again?
The out of the league woman.
Yeah, of course. Well, Charlize Theron's out of everybody's league. She's hot as hell. Anyway, she remembers him because she used to babysit for him, and hires him on as a speechwriter. And over time, of course, they fall in love. It's a romantic comedy. But all throughout,
oh, that's so great. The shenanigans ensue.
Yeah, all throughout this film, of course, it's just if you do not agree with the far left politics, they just lay it out. You're a horrible human being, blah, blah. This, I do have to give the movie credit, because he's going off on how all Republicans are racist, evil bitches, and they have to die, that kind of stuff. When his black friends go, dude, I'm down with the GOP. I am a Republican. And he even points out, I've been wearing, he goes, next thing you're going to tell me you're a Christian. And he pulls out his cross. I've been wearing this since we've known each other, since we were kids. And he wouldn't see it because he didn't want to see. So I do have to admit that they kind of throw his own bigotry at him a little bit, but it is so wiped away. as just as quickly. Overall, I can't recommend this film because while it's very good on telling you what you need to do and what you need to think and how you need to think, and if you don't think this way, you're bad, it's light on laughs. There are a couple here and there, but overall, it really is not very funny. And when it really does try to make you laugh, it goes for a joke in the broadest sense. I know Seth Rogen can be better than this. I know for a fact Charlize Theron can be better than this. Overall, though, Long Shot is average at best.
So Long Shot, you're saying, is no shot.
And
that's the kill shot.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be forgotten about. And what were we talking about again?
I think we were talking about the fact that I believe it was Eric Brain's channel. He'd reminded me the other night that we just say, no, next.
The second in the woke comedies I saw was a movie called Booksmart, which has two girls who work their asses off throughout school to get into good colleges like Yale, only to find out that some of the friends they have that didn't work as hard and didn't dedicate themselves to school are getting these opportunities as well. So they decide before they go off to college, they're going to have this one night of crazy antics. And of course, the antics ensue. This is possibly the most woke comedy that I have ever seen. It is the most social justice comedy I've ever seen. And I'm not saying this because, one of the characters is a lesbian. That to me, just the existence of somebody being something does not mean woke. It's when you go for all of the dialogue and when you go for all of the ideology of a far leftist, that's when it's woke, and that's where it hits here. Every man in this submits. They are less than the women around them. And to me, once again, that's not what makes us. You're not making women strong by making yourself weak. There's a guy who actually has a license plate that says "fuck boy" on it, and and I respect women, and he calls himself fuck boy. And dude, you have any idea what that means? Really? I mean, I know we joke about it, but if you understand what that means, it's once again not a very funny comedy. I wish it was. I was looking forward to this. I was looking forward to Long Shot, and if I put on a comedy, I actually want to laugh. There was one scene that I did laugh out loud. I mean, like really strong laugh. So I would recommend this more than Long Shot, because there was one scene where I actually laughed out loud. And I'm going to spoil it for you. So normally I'm like, hey, spoilers, don't watch. This time spoilers watch, so you don't have to go see this piece of shit film. But there's a scene where they're trying to get to this big party they kept hearing about, and a lot of the film is that particular adventure, kind of like a Harold and Kumar, we just want to get to White Castle thing. And they decide they would order they find out that this is a certain pizza company. This guy has delivered pizzas to them, so they jump in the back of the car and they're using their hair as masks. And this guy just goes off. Oh, excuse me. This guy goes off on him about, you can't jump into a guy's car like this. You could get hurt. There's a freeway. I could literally take you out to the woods, hide you in a cabin, film it while you starve. And, gets very specific. And I thought that was really funny. But then later, one of them's taken to jail, and as they pass by a bulletin board, on the bulletin board is, have you seen this man, Los Angeles Strangler? And it's an artistic rendering of the guy that was telling him not to get in his car. And I thought that was really funny. Otherwise, this is a pass. It's a bad film.
Yeah, you were talking all that time and SJSW stuff, and all I heard was blah, 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 because, I mean, I know you deal with this a lot on your exponentially growing channel of I Love Comics. I mean, it's fantastic just how much it's growing, and it's like, I wonder how people have the stamina to put up with this stuff. And I've mentioned before previously that it's unfortunate that with communists today, it was always interesting when we could laugh back in the day, because we could relate to something and we understood it, whether it was guy comedy or girl comedy. And I've always said that women typically just aren't funny, especially when they do guy stuff or guy jokes. They're just not. And in just comics in general, it's the person who's funny, not the material. And with this whole watering down of the SJW type stuff and not having allegedly clearly defined roles, you get a situation where a scene comes up in a movie that you really can't talk about it in average ways that most people still believe and act without people going crazy about it. And I think for Brightburn, you had a lot of that where people were just going, oh, this movie's awful, it's insensitive, and everybody was just going, you know what? It's not a stupid horror movie. It's got to be woke. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. It's like, no, you're missing the whole point of the movie. And so, unfortunately, there's a generation of people out there today that no matter what, have been programmed to accept that in these movies. So I think that's why I've mentioned before my theory about Generation Z, that the much younger people are starting to get more interested in stuff back from the 70s and 80s because there was actual character, there was different things going on, and you're going to have Seth Rogen do all these kinds of movies, and you know what? They're all going to be the same. They're not going to be distinguishable from each other. And if you're going to be a martial arts person and do a movie like Amy Johnston, and it is what it is, and you're okay with that, more power to you. But when you start getting into ideas and all this other kind of stuff where you have to rely on that to carry you, it's just not very good. I mean, if it's written well, which there's not good writing in it, it's just going to fail. You know, there was an article that came out today in Britain I was following for the Bond movies because we've had our reviews on that. Apparently Daniel Craig's going to be making like 50-60 million pounds off this movie at least, which is, you know, close to 75-100 million US currently with the exchange rates. He's got such influence that he's bringing on a female writer or two. I forget what they've worked on, but so that way James Bond can learn to appreciate women and be more woke. So now whatever the Bond 25s is, because it's not Shatterhand, because people heard about it, now it's not that. There's going to be a total of 6 writers on it. And I just got really violent there at the end with my explanations of James Bond and just how bad it is. And you know what? I said it was Barbara Broccoli's fault because she's empowering Daniel Craig to do everything, but it goes to show you get somebody like Seth Rogen who might have been good starting off. Once you get a big head, once you get some of that money, you just go, you know what? My gravy train meal ticket is just to be woke and SJW type stuff, so I'll just star in these vehicles, and they put forth any effort, and you know what? You absolutely hate it. So End of rant. You know, I'm sorry to hear that you saw 2 movies that weren't very good. I'm sure there's going to be several more that are out there like that.
The set, I was really rooting for him too. I actually, like I said, I like Seth Rogen comedies. I'm the one person who stands up for the fucking Green Hornet, and to watch both of these movies fail was really bad. Yeah.
Eric's asking the channel. He's saying, "Hey, by the way, is there a Thunderdome tonight?" I believe the correct answer to that is yes, 10 p.m. Eastern. Do you verify that?
Yes, 10 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be Tim Lim and his writing partner competing tonight. The judges are going to be Dalton as always, because you know he's
that's what Dalton does.
Yeah. Just Some Guy and. Oh goodness, I feel so bad. I forgot the name, the third one, because unranked Chevron didn't answer quick enough, and it's going to be Tyler Robinson helping out as well. Yeah, I want to get unranked on it as a contestant as well. Get him in there.
Right. Do you expect a lot of violence?
I don't know. Tim's a nice guy, but I don't know how he acts with his writing partner.
Would it be safe to say that the winner of this is usually the one that gets more extreme?
I will, yes, because passion actually does help out in an argument. So yes, I do believe that. That actually happened last week with a young lady named Tristan Nordette, who has been invited to speak on this channel more than once. So if she ever has time.
Well, she was the winner. I know that too. So she's automatically got a pass for that. So that's good. I know she'll be on at some point, which is something to look forward to. So what else would you like to discuss before we close out for the evening?
Well, we did do a review of Aladdin for the channel. Actually, me and Dalton talked on the Disney channel. I thought, well, it would be good for here too. Let's just go with that, because I really like the dichotomy. He came in, he likes the live action remakes. I hate them. I find
Disney or just in general?
The Disney live action remakes that they've been doing.
Okay.
And Aladdin came out, and I figured, okay, this is a good dichotomy. We should both talk about it since we're coming from 2 different places. I liked it a little bit more than he did, but both of us agree that Will Smith was a train wreck. It's very strange to see an unconfident Will Smith, and you'd see that filling Robin Williams' shoes from the first film is an impossible task, and I think it just overwhelmed him, to tell you the truth. But yeah, check that out. Obviously, the Brightburn review that did originally, and on my I Love Comics channel, I just dropped a video. This is interesting. There's an extended scene that shows Captain Marvel using her superpowers to steal a motorcycle and clothing. So
You mean from the movie, or
yeah, from the movie. So she literally is a supervillain in this. She uses her powers to hurt somebody and steal stuff. So I did a little review on that. So because frankly, I'm not a big fan of the film in the first place. It's very flat. It's just not entertaining. And it gets so many people surrounding to protect this film. It's yeah. So I'll probably drop that here as well, I think.
Roger that.
Yeah,
because I've been hearing because overall attendance generally, or I should say box office, not necessarily attendance, from what I understand, is about 10% down from last year as of this point. And so a lot of people are saying that, oh, even Avengers Endgame kind of underperformed a little bit with John Wick coming out and stealing, the #1 spot for that first week. So I know that we've talked about some of the bigger movies we think may happen this summer, but I think overall the trend is going to be a slightly down summer. That's just my take, and I really certainly don't have the area of expertise that you do when it comes to a lot of the tentpole movies and franchises that are out there. And the whole idea goes back to the whole, pandering type movies with SJW. And I've always said, market-wise, I could care less. If they make 90% of movies of crap and people spend their money on them, that's fine. But one thing here on the Xtreme Movie Channel that I do like is the fact that, say, Amy Johnston, somebody I wasn't necessarily familiar with, never saw her as Harley Quinn, never saw that movie. The fact that we can have somebody from a different generation mention that to me is, hey, that you might be interested in checking this out. And I did, and it turned out to be pretty good. I mean, that's what it's all about. So I do appreciate people coming over from your channel, the new listeners we have, and some of the originals that like to pop on to talk about it. Because for us as old timers, we can talk about the older stuff and mention why it was good and fun. But sometimes with these newer people, younger ones that are seeing it, they're realizing that, hey, a lot of stuff out there is garbage. I want more. I want to be entertained. And again, doesn't have to be high quality, doesn't have to be genius level writing, but consistent to its character, entertaining, and what it's the movie's general rules of thumb are trying to do, and you see whether or not it executes it and how well it does. So when you talk about Will Smith, a guy that a lot of people say he's talented, when I saw the preview, I said, oh gosh, the auto-tune I can hear, so maybe he can't sing at all. I don't know that.
no.
I never liked him. I never hated him, but usually Scientology actors, honestly, generally have some sort of mental ability to do well in acting, not just Tom Cruise, but others. So a little surprised to hear that. Unconfident Will Smith. That I think that's a really great description, especially for a live type sort of performance. But for me,
well, as far as you bring up the auto tune, I didn't mention this in our review, so I can mention it here. It really does seem like he's not a great singer, but he is a good rapper, and he kind of does this thing where it's a melding of the two, like he's rapping Prince Ali, fabulous he, Alia Babwa, and there's no life in it at all. Like I said, it's very underconfident, and it shows. And yes, they do use auto-tune.
I understand the tools out there. I get it. It's just like we talk about how bad music is, but that's ultimately up to the writer, the director. But you know what? Everybody there at Disney's looking at it going, you know what? Who cares? It's just good enough. And at some point, that lack of quality and having to reach, because they don't have to at this point, it's going to be an issue. So my prediction with one of the bigger streaming services going to fail at some point here in the next couple of years, I think it's going to come true. And at some point, you're going to have a reemphasis on quality is my hope for somebody to start up. And I think, one of the reasons why I do like horror is that you can pretty much make something on a small micro type budget and be entertaining and good. And I think whatever film studios or outfits that produce stuff either for Netflix or like a lot of the Stephen King stuff that's getting produced out there, if you get the right people on it, you can really put out some good content. And I know we're trying to find that too. I did mention earlier with Doctor, I don't believe you've heard the news yet. We were joking about how, we really love Sylvester Stallone, a lot of stuff that he's done, and we haven't even touched him that much. But apparently the news is Stallone is trying to actually get Cobra made into like a small series, maybe on Netflix or something, and he's not going to star in it necessarily, but he's going to help create it and push it forward. And if he's involved in picking the right people, that could be a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, I could see it working out, and it's good to hear that he understands he's aged out.
Yes.
You know, that is something. I mean, I know it's like Kevin Spacey wanted to do a movie about Bobby Darin, but he didn't freaking realize he is aged out. He wanted to play him for so long that he still put his 50-ass self in to play a 36-year-old character, a guy who was 36 when he died, much less when he first started. So, yeah, it's good to know that.
Cicella's asking a channel at us while y'all are here, is there a cycle and boom bust of movies / movie industry, theaters, DVDs? I think generally overall, I think it's a good question, but I think there's a consolidation of what's going on, because it's really now how you go get your content, and we can stay at home and see it. Also, I think I have an issue drawing a line between film and TV. I just want to be entertained. And right now with social media, you can let everybody know, like we do with Brightburn, for example. Brightburn's worth saying. If you think it's a superhero film, sorry, I think it's a horror film. That's my opinion about it. But we can argue till the cows come home. But bottom line is, no matter how you describe it, it's still, I think, a solid film for what it's trying to do. But for horror movies in general, they're cheap. And whenever you get one or two that are produced and do well, it's just like everything else in Hollywood. There's a copycat. And I think we mentioned before, last week, we talked about on our stream about Maw coming out. It's a little bit different, but it's coming out in July. Normally, you don't get horror movies too much now, because they would slip one in January, because it's a dead time, and it was after the Oscar winners were coming out, the award winners. Then they would throw one in the fall, like Halloween last year, which was decent. It was a very good one, relatively speaking. So every now and then you're going to get a little trial sample, and if one or two of these horror movies here in the summer come up, you're going to start seeing them evenly spaced out, because, you know, Blumhouse Productions, whoever's involved with all the stuff that they produce, it's super cheap. It doesn't have to make a lot of money to be profitable. That's a recipe for success. So I think we're in a boom cycle right now. What would you say?
As far as movies are concerned, where are we as far as
horror movies? Do you think they're in a boom cycle, bust cycle? What
yes,
do you think?
Absolutely. And I would think very much. I would put a lot of it on Blumhouse.
Yes.
They've really made horror films boom. And what they've done is they've shown that if you can do this with a low budget, you can make a lot of money, and therefore, you know, and that's really worked out. So yeah, I do see a boom for horror films right now, especially low to mid tier horror movies. I would love for them to realize that you don't need $700 million to make a superhero film too, especially something like a Batman or a Daredevil.
Well, I think you're right about that too. And, you know, tentpole movies are going to be tentpole movies. They're going to be big movies. Yep. They're good for a base. When a big company like Sony or whoever needs to have $1 billion worth of films, and they rely on 3 or 4 big ones, it's easier to oversee 3 or 4 films and make them just palatable enough to get a certain amount of money and manage everything. That's a legitimate business model, and your bigger companies outweigh. So I've always kind of preferred more of the independent guys, the more artist types, just in terms of the films that I like. So again, to each their own for what they like. It's just a big company is going to basically have the resources to get the rights to a lot of these things. And hopefully Disney doesn't, for their sake, you know, kind of sleep on their laurels a little bit with their streaming channel coming out, let a lot of their stuff go to crap, because I think Disney's big enough where they're going to insist on everything being SJW type. And you know what? For Disney, it may work. They're going to get everything probably basically all exactly the same. And a generation of people are going to realize, you know what? They don't know any different. So our job here on Extreme Movie Show is to present all these other different types of films out there and be a little extreme in our takes. That way people understand that, and hopefully people can show us some things that are interesting and relevant to them, because that's what we like to talk about too. So I know that tomorrow we were going to discuss a couple other films as well too. So I think we'll go ahead and call it a night, unless there's anything else that you wanted to address.
At this point, yeah, I'm good. Go check out the Captain Marvel thing, or wait for it to be here. And yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, Olympus Has Fallen, and the third movie, Englentine Has Fallen, will be coming out in in August. So right. Looking forward to that and all that. Yes, we have. It's great with the drones. Alexis, I'm looking forward to seeing that. That was one of the few films I said, you know what?
There's a new preview for a new Olympus movie. What is it called? I haven't seen it.
Englentine Has Fallen, yes.
Oh, You guys suck. Okay.
No, it's legit. It's a cool scene. He's now protecting, I guess, the president, and they're fishing on a boat, and they're sitting there talking whatever guy stuff. And it's kind of, an afternoon. I think it looks like the wintertime, maybe, or the fall. And you see a big flock of birds kind of flying by, and he's looking up at them. And I think he's just staring at them, and he realizes, hey, wait a minute. That's not how birds move. And the birds all fly towards them, and they realize there are all these really, really tiny drones that take them all out, so they have to dump in the water. So he's set up in this movie, and he has to, of course, free himself to go, prove that he's not the actual killer or, attempted killer, or whatever, the United States. So, you know what? It's going to be awesome.
Alrighty.
But can he get at Morgan Freeman? No. I'm going to talk like this and get my 50 million. All right, guys. As always, for Englentine, for myself, and for the doctor, Englentine, who stepped in tonight for a little bit. Everybody have a good night. And always remember, Thunderdome's dear, and stay extreme. Good night.
Thank you for watching.